is Matthew Davis, and this is my neurological-based behavior presentation. I chose to do my presentation on learning disabilities, and the learning disability I chose in particular was dyslexia. So to jump in, what is dyslexia? It's a language-based learning disability. Dyslexia causes difficulty in word processing, and it could cause students who have it to uh, fall behind in their typical instructional environment and behind their peers. So, for instance, when students are handed a worksheet with a story on it or a grammar worksheet, students with dyslexia would have a tougher time processing those words on the page, thus slowing their work tempo down, and they end up falling behind their peers in a typical learning environment. More severe forms of dyslexia usually qualify students for special education, special accommodations of some sort, or extra support services. Dyslexia refers to a bundle of word processing symptoms. For instance, this includes difficulties with specific language skills, such as reading and writing. Students generally have difficulty with pronouncing words, spelling, or writing. It's pretty common with students with dyslexia. Students with dyslexia also are affected on a lifelong continuum, essentially. They're going to always be affected by it, but with proper interventions, students and people usually overcome this learning disability. So, a description of it, the exact causes of dyslexia are still not completely clear, but brain imagery studies show that there are differences in the way the brain develops and processes within a person who has dyslexia. So as you guys can see here, I've included a picture of two brains. One brain is of a quote-unquote typical student, and the brain on the right is the brain of a person with dyslexia. And typically, when people with dyslexia are reading, these two parts of the brain aren't being activated. So it's a neurological-based learning disability, and it affects everybody differently. But it's important for us to remember that students with dyslexia it's not due to their lack of intelligence or desire to learn. It's of neurological origin, so it's not something that they're choosing to do. It's important for us to remember that as well. The effects of dyslexia on the classroom and classroom behaviors. First being that people with dyslexia usually have problems or could have problems with spoken language. So students may find it difficult to express themselves clearly or 100% accurately. This is an issue that could most likely and more than likely will bleed into other areas of life outside of academia for students with dyslexia. Second would be intervention at a young age. Some individuals with dyslexia are able to learn early on reading and spelling skills, and they're able to manage at the lower grades by getting by with these skills. However, as they get older and age out a little bit more into their secondary schooling, they later experience more severe problems because that level of schooling requires more complex language skills. They're required to implement more proper grammar, understand textbook material, or write longer essays. So the more complex the work gets, the more severe the issue gets of not properly working with your dyslexia. And third is actually self-image. Students with dyslexia also have a negative effect on their self-image sometimes. Students with dyslexia often end up feeling dumb or less capable than they actually are after experiencing the stress of academic issues, feeling behind. A lot of times these students become discouraged in continuing with their schooling. So this is a possible opportunity for us counselors to come in with some proper interventions to help out with their self-image issues. Classroom challenges that dyslexia bring. So it's important for us to remember at its core that dyslexia causes students to have difficulty within word recognition, spelling, reading fluency, and writing. It's important to know that these are common challenges, but not applicable to everyone with dyslexia. Common classroom challenges include speech sounds. These students would typically have issues with identifying the separate speech sounds within a word. So for instance, I've taken a screenshot of a worksheet that a student with dyslexia would use, and they're identifying the word part TH, that TH sound in the word of that or in the word bath. as well as the CK sound in the word sock or the word back. Um, Oftentimes, dyslexic students also have issues with letter sounds. They may have difficulty learning how letters represent the sounds. So as you guys can see right here, I have a picture of a J with a serving spoon and some jiggling jam in there. Oftentimes, brain imagery studies showed, as I just showed, that parts of the brain aren't firing. So what professionals do now is they help fire different parts of the brain to associate letter sounds with the letter. So, for instance, jiggling jam, that can relate to the letter J. Or a better example is uniquely cued sound to letter links. So, for instance, the letter T, the sound of tapping, tap, 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 that's firing a part of my brain understanding sound. Picture imagery, we're using the tiger inside of a T so you can remember the letter sound T. So, imagery and sound are different techniques that they use oftentimes for students with dyslexia. A little simulation I want to add in here. Oftentimes people think that dyslexia means students or people are reading backwards or they're not seeing a whole letter. There's different forms or symptoms of this learning disability, but I thought this was probably the most easy to understand and easy to visualize. So I'll give you guys a second to go ahead and try to read through this paragraph here. Okay, so it's a little bit difficult, obviously, right? We're not exactly seeing the whole word, and we're having trouble identifying what the word is and sounds and just straight up word structuring. When a typical student would read, this is something that they would see. So a lot easier for us to process. Good little exercise for one person to kind of, I guess, see what dyslexia is like from a first person's perspective. So, counter strategies of intervention. First would be listening. So, listening to our students' feelings of anxiety, anger, depression. This could be a daily occurrence for them. And since their language and communication issues could possibly be an effect of their dyslexia, it's difficult for them to express their feelings. So, it's important for us as counselors to help them learn how to express themselves properly. It's also important for us to not label them when confronting, certain behavior of these dyslexic students. We shouldn't use words as lazy. It could really damage their self-image or cause a lot of unintentional harm with our words. It's important for our students to be viewed as holistically from us counselors as well too. We should understand their advantages and their limitations, their type of disability. Just being a counselor, we're going to deal with students outside of dyslexia, outside of the dyslexic learning disability. There's going to be a whole range of disabilities. So it's important for us to view them holistically and see what their environment is and their limitations. Goals. It's important for us to help set realistic goals for our students. Many students with dyslexia set perfectionist goals or unattainable goals. So by helping our students set a more obtainable goal, we could help change that cycle of failure that they may be feeling. Student autonomy. As counselors, that's our job with a lot of students outside of learning disability as well. All of our students, tier 1 interventions. Student autonomy is important for us to promote. We want to increase their feelings of self-efficacy and their awareness of their locus of control. We got to make sure they feel in charge and they're aware of that. As far as teacher strategies go, there's a whole class I'm sure that could be taught on it. I was reading through the internet and reading through a couple studies. There's many different strategies and methodologies that we could use as teachers, but I'm just covering the counseling side, so that's for a different presentation. I've also included my reference page right here. Give you guys a second to look at that. And that concludes my presentation. I appreciate you guys for watching, and thank you.